All right, let's talk about something that frustrates more people than almost anything else I see in medicine. If you've ever been told that your labs are normal while your body clearly isn't, this video is for you, so listen up. My name is Dr. Seth Osgood, and I'm a doctor of nursing practice. I'm board certified as a family nurse practitioner. I'm certified through the Institute for Functional Medicine. Because here's the truth that most people are never told. Autoimmune disease is one of the most common categories of chronic illness in the United States and one of the most commonly missed. Depending on how you define it, somewhere between 20 and 50 million Americans are living with an autoimmune disease. That's not rare, that is mainstream. And yet the average person with an autoimmune issue spends years, literally years, bouncing from doctor to doctor before they ever get an answer. On average, about 4 to 5 years and close to 5 different clinicians before a diagnosis is finally made. And that's not because these people aren't sick. It's because most autoimmune disease is invisible on standard labs until it's in that advanced stage. And by the time it's obvious, damage has often already been done. And that is not what you want. I want to explain why that happens, why so many autoimmune markers are ignored every day, and what actually matters if you want clarity instead of reassurance, because reassurance doesn't heal anybody. Now, let's start with the biggest lie in medicine, the word normal. When your doctor says your labs are normal, what that really means is nothing here forces me to make a diagnosis. Now, that is very different from saying your immune system is functioning normally. Most reference ranges are based on population averages, not optimal health, not early disease detection, just averages. And those populations include people who are inflamed, stressed, insulin resistant, sleep deprived, and already sick. So normal often just means you haven't crossed that line yet. Autoimmune disease doesn't start with a diagnosis. It starts with immune dysregulation, and that dysfunction can exist for years before a diagnosis is ever met. Now, this is where testing starts to fall apart. If autoimmune testing happens at all, it usually begins and ends with an ANA, an anti-nuclear antibody. Now, on paper, that sounds reasonable. In real life, it's one of the most misunderstood tests in medicine. First and foremost, an ANA is not positive or negative. It has titers. A 1 to 40 titer is not the same as a 1 to 320 titer. Early autoimmune disease often starts with very low titers that rise over time, but low positives are routinely dismissed because they're so common. Second, ANA patterns matter: homogeneous, speckled, nucleolar, centimere, and most patients are never told what their pattern even is or what it means. And then third, and this is critical, a negative ANA does not rule out autoimmunity. It's just the test that everybody runs. Thyroid autoimmunity, neurological autoimmunity, gut-driven autoimmunity, all of these can exist with a negative ANA. Yet patients are told that because your ANA is normal, you have no autoimmune issues, and that's simply not the truth. Now let's talk about antibodies. This is something you really need to understand because this is where things get missed. One of the most damaging beliefs in medicine is that antibodies are incidental or insignificant unless they justify a diagnosis. And I'm here to tell you they're not. Antibodies are signals. They're immune system tags that tell us or tell your immune system where and what to attack. In lupus, for example, we know from very solid research that disease-specific antibodies can show up to 9 years before a diagnosis is made. 9 years. That means the immune system was dysregulated long before anyone felt comfortable saying it was a disease. And this isn't just lupus. We see it across the board with multiple patterns and multiple diseases. Thyroid antibodies like TPO, thyroglobulin, and Graves' disease antibodies can show up years before a TSH is abnormal. Rheumatoid antibodies or anti-CCP, we can see that on labs before tissue damage is visible. Scleroderma antibodies can appear before skin changes become obvious. Gut antibodies like celiac or Crohn's or colitis can exist long before someone is told that they have inflammatory bowel disease. And then neurological antibodies can show up long before imaging testing looks scary enough where neurology will make a diagnosis. This is why people feel dismissed. From a conventional standpoint, these findings are not specific. There's not enough data here to make a diagnosis, so no action is taken. From an immune standpoint, these are warning signals. This is the difference between waiting for the house to burn down and responding when the fire alarm goes off. In medicine, we are trained for specificity, absolute certainty before taking action. That's great for late stage disease. It's terrible when you're trying to detect it early. Autoimmune disease is a process. It's not an event. Early disease looks like fluctuating symptoms, waxing and waning labs, normal imaging, nothing definitive. Medicine waits for the break-in. Functional medicine listens for the motion detector. Now, let's make this a little bit personal for a moment because I really want you to understand that this is not theoretical for me. During my own issues triggered by Lyme disease and immune dysfunction, I developed severe neurological symptoms. I had all sorts of things. Had numbness down my right side, tingling, muscle twitching, spasms, autonomic instability. MRIs were inconclusive, and neurology just wasn't concerned. But antibody testing told me a different story. I actually had myelin antibodies, meaning that the immune system was attacking components of my nervous system. The same mechanism that we oftentimes will see in patients with multiple sclerosis. Now, luckily, I didn't have multiple sclerosis, but those antibodies were giving similar symptoms. And they helped me to understand the why behind my nervous system acting crazy. Neurology now ignored these antibodies because I didn't meet any diagnostic criteria. But for me, it provided clarity. They validated my symptoms and they guided a structured plan of attack. That's the difference between testing for labels and testing for mechanisms. And that's what most people never get. Autoimmunity is not one disease. It's a pattern of immune dysregulation that can affect different areas: the thyroid, joints, skin, gut, brain, pancreas. Oftentimes more than one of these things at the same time. And that's why siloed testing really does fail. This is also why broader immune mapping can sometimes be really useful. Not to create fear, not to hand out a diagnosis, but to understand patterns. Testing shouldn't give you anxiety. It should give you direction. Antibodies are information. They're not a life sentence. It's not a verdict. And if all you've ever been told is let's just wait and see, you're being asked to wait for damage instead of understanding why that dysfunctioning is actually occurring. So what do you do with all this information? First, I just want to inform you that education, it really does matter. And I know most people aren't getting enough of that. If you're not ready to talk to anyone yet about what's going on, learn. Understand the root causes of autoimmunity: infections, gut permeability, toxin burden, stress, nutrient depletion, genetics interacting over time. We put a lot of effort at our clinic into educational content and our master classes for this exact reason, to give you clarity before you make a decision about your health. But for some people, education answers the what, but not the what now. And if you're sitting there thinking, I'm just tired of bouncing around from doctor to doctor, or I don't want another label that really changes nothing, and I definitely don't want a prescription that just band-aids the symptoms, then it might be time for a different conversation. I just really want people to think about how important their health is. Life is too short to spend years chasing a diagnosis that offers no resolution. If you're ready for testing that really gives you clarity, or you just want a structured path towards real solutions, the next step may be to schedule a discovery call with our team at Grassroots Functional Medicine. This is not a sales call. It's a clinical conversation to see whether or not our approach is the right fit for you and whether you are the right fit for us. We don't take everyone because we want people to get good outcomes, and we're very intentional about that. But for the right person, this conversation replaces years of uncertainty with an actual plan. And that's what we hope for each and every person. If you want to do that, you can schedule a discovery call on our website, grassrootsfunctionalmedicine.com. And then just before we wrap up, I want you to know who's talking, who's giving me all this information. My name is Dr. Seth Osgood, and I'm a doctor of nursing practice. I'm board certified as a family nurse practitioner, and I'm certified through the Institute for Functional Medicine. I've been practicing functional functional medicine for over 10 years now. But more importantly, I built my clinic because I've lived this. I know what it's like to be told that everything is fine when your body clearly isn't. I know what it's like to be passed from specialist to specialist while no one is looking at the big picture. At Grassroots, we don't chase labels here. Honestly, sometimes it's helpful, but it is not essential. We look for mechanisms. That's the clue. That's the key point here. We use testing to create clarity, and we focus on root causes. We're not just looking for temporary fixes. If that resonates with you, we would love to have that conversation. I really, truly appreciate the time you're putting into your health, being here, learning more, being your own advocate. I can't tell you how important that is. So thank you for that, and I wish you the best on your health journey. If I haven't met you, I hope to meet you soon, and have a blessed day.